Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm trying to step my game up. I got a microphone now. It's not a bow tie, just a microphone. But we have a new project today, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to trim out this window, and we're going to trim it out in that Craftsman style look. I have another video up on the channel of how to trim a door in that Craftsman style. You may want to take a look at that because this is really very similar to what we did on that door. What we're going to do to start with, we're just going to be building a frame around this window. And at the bottom of the frame, there'll be this little piece of stool. And to me, this is the most difficult part of the project because we have to figure out these cutouts, because on the edge of the window, the stool is going to extend past that. Everything will be built off of this, so this is a really important part. Before we can start, we have to take a couple of really important measurements. We need to know how wide the window is. This one is 31.5. We need to know how tall it is, and it's 37.75. And we need to know how far it sits back in the framing. From the edge of the window to the edge of the drywall is 1 7/8 inches. So with those measurements, we'll be able to figure out how to cut out our parts and how wide and how tall and how long they should be. What we're going to do on this is we're going to build the entire project downstairs in the shop. We'll cut our parts out, we'll put it together. We're going to build the frame using pocket holes, and we'll put it together, we'll paint it, and then we're going to bring it up here, lay it into place, and just nail it. Now when we go to putting it into place, it's not going to fit perfectly. We're going to have to shim it. And I've come up with a pretty unique way to shim these windows, which I'll show you later in the video. So what we have to do now is go down to the shop, get out our pencil and paper and abacus, and do the math and figure out the dimensions of the parts we need to cut out. So let's get started on that. Let's talk about how we actually build the bottom piece of the frame or the stool. And what we do is we start out with a 1x4, which is actually 3.5 inches wide. And we set up our router table with a 3/8 inch roundover bit, and we run it through top and bottom and create this nice round nose, this profile right here. Now once we've done that, we have to figure out this cutout right here. If you remember, the window sits back from the edge of the drywall 1 7/8 inches. So we know right here we're cutting out 1 7/8 inches. Now, how much do we leave extra right here? Well, I don't have a great deal of madness behind that method, but I can tell you that 4.5 inches for what I'm doing is working out really good. So I've got an extra 4.5 inches on this side. We've got an extra 4.5 inches on this side, so we're up 9 now. Now, the actual width from the inside of the cutout right here and right here, if you remember, the width on the window was 31.5, so that's what we're building to. So we've got 31.5 from here to here. We're picking up an extra 9, so this piece overall dimension is going to be 40.5. Now once we know what our cutouts are going to be right here, we can just take our jigsaw or take it to a bandsaw or whatever and cut this out. So this is actually a piece for another window, so I'm going to just build a new one and we'll get that done and continue building this frame. Okay, so we have our stool built, and what we need to do now is go ahead and cut out the remaining pieces of the frame, the top rail and the two stiles. Now if you remember, the depth of the window from the edge of the drywall to the surface of the window was 1 7/8 inches. So we're going to have to go to the table saw and rip down some stock that's 1 7/8 inches. The width or the length of the top rail is pretty easy. It's just 31.5. That was the width of the window. That's what we cut out for right here, and that's what we're building to. The stiles are a little bit different. If you remember, the total height of the window was 37 3/4. What's going to happen with this top rail, the stile is going to come into it, and we'll pick up 3/4 of an inch here, and on the stool here, the stile will come into it. We pick up another 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to pick up 1.5 inches. We're going to have to take 1.5 inches off of that overall window dimension, and that leaves us the stiles being 36 1/4 inches tall. So let's go ahead and rip down these pieces. What we're going to do, once we get the stiles cut out, I'll actually drill pocket holes in them, and that's how this frame will be assembled. So let's go ahead and do that. All right then, we're ready to go ahead and start putting this frame together with pocket holes. That looks good. There's that side. That one did good. Whoops, we almost had a disaster. Okay, let's do the top. Okay. All right, we have our frame built, and we'll just take it upstairs now and test fit it to make sure everything's looking good. All right, what we need to do now is go ahead and put our frame in the window opening and see how it turned out. This should give you a little better idea of what we're trying to accomplish. And this fits really good. I'm real pleased with this. We have a real nice tight fit against the drywall on both sides. It looks really square. I think this has turned out better than any window that I've built in this house. So I'm pleased. What's going to happen next is we will start building out the trim pieces on this window frame. And there'll be a trim board like this that will cover this entire distance. And what we'll do is we'll cut a neat little unique profile in the sides, and just to give it a little flair. And then we'll build a header assembly that'll go across the top. And the final piece is a little skirt board that we'll build. So by now you should probably be getting an idea of how all this works. So what we need to do now is take all this back down to the shop and start measuring out our other pieces and cutting them and putting this all together. Okay, so we have our frame built. We're satisfied with the way it fits. We're ready to move on to something else. What we're going to do is build the trim pieces that are going to go on each side of this assembly. And what they're going to be made out of is just a 1x4. But we're going to run this 1x4 through the router table with a beating bit just to put this profile on it. Don't have to do that. It'd probably be pretty cool without it, but you know, I just want something that you can't buy off the shelf at Lowe's, and I think that looks pretty cool. Before we can do that, we need to talk about exactly where that trim board is going to go along the face of this style here. We want to have a reveal of about 1/4 inch. Now I've got my little homemade reveal gauge, and that's 1/4 inch right there. And what I'm going to do, just lay it up against it, go up through here at different points, and mark where the reveal is going to be. There's also going to be a reveal across the top, so I need to go ahead and mark that. And why that's important right now is because we need to determine the distance or the length of this trim piece that's going to go on the side here. Okay? And it needs to go from the bottom of this stool to the edge of the reveal on the top. So looking at that, looks like we're about 36.5. So what we can do now is we can cut out our 1x4s to that dimension and go ahead and run it through the router table, put the profile on it, and then we're just going to come in here with an 18 gauge nailer and we'll tack it in place just so it'll hold. We'll be ready to move on to building the header assembly. Okay, so now we have our trim pieces cut out and they fit really good. And all we need to do now is come in here with an 18 gauge nailer. I've got 1-inch nails in it, and we'll just run some nails through here and get it tacked into place. Okay, so we're just going to lay our trim board in and match it up to the reveal line that we already marked. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just get it tacked. I'm actually nailing down through the channel where we routed, and that way it'll kind of hide that nail a little bit. Probably have to come back in with a nail set and push it in there a little bit further, but so we'll continue down the piece nailing it. Okay, those all went in real good. Let's do the other side and then we'll step back and take a look at it. Okay, so we have our trim pieces attached. It's not super strong at this point. We've just kind of tacked it into place with an 18 gauge nailer. This whole thing will strengthen up when we actually put it in the window and start nailing it down permanent.